In the winter of 1998, local authorities entered a small, frost-covered cabin in a remote Transylvanian village. The door was locked from the inside. The windows were shut tight. But the documentary filmmaker named Daniel Mercer was gone. The only thing left behind was his camcorder, resting untouched on the wooden floorboards. The scene presented an immediate physical paradox. There was absolutely zero evidence of forced entry. No splintered wood, no broken glass. Inside, no signs of struggle. No blood, no dragged furniture, and no footprints leading out into the heavy snow surrounding the cabin. They found only one physical anomaly. Carved deeply into the wooden wall of the room was a jagged, ancient, geometric symbol. It was fresh, gouged into the timber with immense force. To extract a fully grown human from a perfectly sealed box requires breaking the physical perimeter. Nothing was broken. The room was perfectly intact. To solve Mercer's disappearance requires explaining how an entity bypasses solid matter entirely. 48 hours earlier, Mercer had arrived in this settlement. It was a place isolated by heavy fog and dense timber, consisting of barely 30 stone and wood houses. The environment was relentlessly hostile, and the locals lived strictly by ancient, unspoken routines. Mercer was hunting a story. He had caught wind of unexplained disappearances and strange sightings tied to the dense woods bordering the town. Where the locals saw terror, Mercer saw perfect material for a viral documentary. He was warned immediately. On his very first night, a village elder named Stefan confronted him, laying out the absolute non-negotiable rule of the community: never go near the Black Forest after sunset. Stefan told him, "This is not a story for cameras. Some things should not be seen again." Mercer smiled politely and ignored him. He was operating on modern skepticism, assuming these warnings were just generational superstition. The villagers, however, operated on unquestioned obedience to a very real boundary. When Mercer approached, heavy doors shut, children stopped playing. The locals knew exactly what happens when you disturb the perimeter. Mercer's refusal to respect that geographic boundary became the catalyst. By actively seeking out the forest at dusk, he provided the conditions required for his own extraction. Just before sunset on his second day, Mercer stepped into the trees. Instantly, the temperature dropped sharply. The wind died completely. The ambient noise of birds and insects vanished, leaving a heavy, unnatural silence. 20 minutes deep, the environment began to change. Mercer found the timber modified. Deep, jagged symbols, matching the one later found in his locked room, scarred the unnaturally tall trees. The markings resembled distorted, abstract faces. Nothing about them looked human. Mercer checked his GPS to mark the coordinates. The screen was dead. He had zero signal. His modern navigation equipment failed entirely the moment he needed it. Deciding to turn back, he looked behind him. The path he had just walked was gone. Every direction looked identical. The same skeletal branches, the same carved faces, repeating in an infinite loop. Then the silence broke. From deep in the timber came the sound of slow, heavy, deliberate footsteps. Mercer froze. The steps didn't stop. He walked faster, and the sound perfectly matched his pace, growing louder, closing the distance directly behind him. The Black Forest behaves like an active, predatory system, manipulating the terrain to ensure the target remains isolated while the pursuit continues. Mercer turned around. Standing at least 8 feet tall was a skeletal figure wrapped in tightly stretched, rotting skin. Its arms dragged near the ground. It had no face, just a smooth, pale surface with 2 deep holes where eyes should be. Inside those holes, the darkness was physically moving. The creature didn't attack. It simply tilted its pale, faceless head and vanished. Mercer ran blindly through the roots and branches until he reached the village lights. He was bleeding and panicked. When he told Stefan what he encountered, the old man offered a terrifying diagnosis. "You saw it, which means it saw you." Locked safely in his room, Mercer played back his camcorder footage to prove what he saw. The camera sensors had recorded a paradox. There was no creature. There were no heavy footsteps. The tape showed only Mercer, walking alone in the dark, reacting to empty space, except for one frame. At the very end of the recording, a split second before Mercer dropped the camera to run, a blurry, indistinct shape appears in the background, watching him. This predator exists outside the physical spectrum of light and sound that technology captures. It bypasses the lens entirely, interacting exclusively with human perception. Mercer stayed awake, barricaded inside his perfectly sealed cabin. At exactly 3:17 a.m., a noise broke the silence. A soft, scraping, dragging sound. It wasn't coming from outside the window or the hallway. It was manifesting inside the room. Mercer slowly turned around. The heavy wooden door was still completely deadbolted. The windows remained securely latched. But standing motionless in the corner of his bedroom was the 8-foot, faceless entity. It remained completely silent. Then, with agonizing slowness, the creature lifted one of its unnaturally elongated, dragging arms. It didn't point at Mercer. It pointed at the space directly behind him. Mercer turned instinctively. A second entity was standing inches from his back. Before he could even register the proximity, everything went black. Wood, stone, and deadbolts offer zero protection. The entity does not require a physical entry point to access a room. It uses the victim's own terrifying awareness of its existence to manifest right beside them. Even with modern equipment, the phenomenon remains elusive. During a 2012 research expedition, thermal cameras failed to capture solid bodies, registering instead impossible jumps in heat signatures across the terrain. One researcher vanished after reporting her own reflection walking toward her from the tree line. Authorities responded by sealing the entire forest area, marking it as a permanent restricted zone to keep people out. But the disappearances began spreading. Reports started surfacing thousands of miles away from Romania, in modern cities and locked suburban homes. These people had never been near the Black Forest, but they shared one terrifying commonality. They had studied Mercer's logs or viewed the leaked 2012 thermal data. The entity binds itself to the observer's awareness, making geographic distance irrelevant. It travels through the very act of being seen, using the story of itself to find its next target. If you are alone in the silence tonight and feel that sudden weight of a presence behind you, keep your eyes forward. Do not turn around, because the moment you look back is the moment it finally sees your face.